everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, and thank you very much for joining us. Last episode was a doozy. A lot of you, this was the first time for you checking out the show. Looks like Balance and Composure is a pretty popular band. I knew that already, but if this is your second time joining us, thank you. I promise this show won't suck. Go back, listen to others. You'll probably enjoy those. Anyways, the guest this week is Nathan Gray, the vocalist from Boy Sets Fire, who is putting out a new record, or has put out a new record by the time that I post this episode. Check it out. I personally have not yet, so that is my fault. But that should not stop you from checking it out. PropertyofZach.com, great friends of ours. Go check out their website. They have all the most amazing news, reviews, editorial features that you could ever want from a website that covers independent music. Check it out. We love them. They love us. It's a mutual love fest. So there we go. Some other orders of business. Review the show. Holy shit, you came out in droves. I got like 4 reviews, and we are over the 100 review mark for the United States store on iTunes. That makes me extremely happy. So honestly, for those of you who stepped up this past time, and everybody was from the U.S., so I really appreciate that. And I'm not being sarcastic about it. I think the last 2 or 3 reviews just completely hit the nail on the head as far as what I am looking for people getting out of the show. So thank you very much, and it really warms my soul that you are understanding and appreciating what it is that I'm doing with this show. So thank you. And if you haven't yet, now's the time. Do it. Step it up. I appreciate it. I read it. I soak it in, and I go, thank you. I would also like to highlight something as well. One of the staff members on the podcast, Mr. Tom Richfield, he is our illustrious editor and has made my life just so much better because of his hard work. He recently graduated. Go to his blog, his website. You can find it on our Facebook page. And give him a congratulations. He graduated. He's now an official member of society. So props to you, Tom. And before we get into my conversation with Nathan, 2 things I want to hit on. One is the fact that I got my first, I don't even know if I would call it hate mail, as I've said in the past. I love suggestions. So people that want to email the show can find the email on the website, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. And, a lot of people like to contribute guest ideas, and a lot of them are now coming to fruition. Tumblr is an important avenue for the show. Like, it seems to be a lot of people find out about the show through the publishing platform Tumblr, which I am using for the back end on the website. And there is an anonymous feature where people can post comments on the blog saying, like, hey, blah, 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 you suck. And then they can leave it anonymously. I'm completely familiar with this scenario because I've seen it happen on so many other websites. I received my first anonymous comment that was trying to steer the show in a certain direction. And I thought it was, at first it was like, what the fuck? And then second, this is a person that's just listened to like one show and doesn't really understand the context. But it was just one of those things where, and here, I'll lay it out. The comment, I'm not going to read it word for word. This is me paraphrasing it. It was something along the lines of, stop talking about yourself and your bands and the experiences that you've had because we don't want to hear about that. Something along those lines. And while I do appreciate that, because I am really fucking cognizant of trying not to be like, hey, this is me. I'm being a self-indulgent asshole and just talking about myself the whole time. And whoever I bring on is an opportunity for me to talk about myself. I can easily see why something like this could turn into that. I don't want to be self-indulgent, even though I do like being the center of attention. I am an only child. These are things that I know about myself. I really don't want this show to be just about me, because essentially that would be really fucking boring. And I don't think the show would have existed as long as it has for 60 some odd episodes if it was just about that. So anyways, with that insecurity off my chest, I just thought it was really funny. I was like, oh, cool. I feel like I've made it. I feel like there's some badge of honor where someone's being like, yo, fuck that dude. Stop talking about yourself. Have the interview person just talk about themselves all the time. Don't really try to share any context. But it was like, okay, I get it. And that's fair enough. Check out. Don't listen to the show. I understand if that's annoying to you. Because what I do, I'm going to give you a little of my, I wouldn't even call it strategy. But I would say you want to relate to people. Even though that I know a majority of these guests that I have on, sometimes these are the first conversations I've ever had with them outside of like 5 minutes at any given time. So I want to kind of lay out like who I am. So it's like I'm not just some random blog that's like, hey, talk to me because you should. I want to let people know that, I might have had similar experiences. I might have shared some of the same things as they have in their past. And that way, it kind of brings us on the same level. And then that way it's not this whole imbalance like of you're the band, I'm the interviewer, that's it. Or you're the person creating art and I am the interviewer and that's it. Because that's not what I'm trying to create here. It's just people sharing their experiences that happen to be involved in independent music and culture. Done. There we go. Can I be more whiny in that? I apologize. Anyways, now we're going to talk about Nathan Gray. Boy Sets Fire is such a huge band in the sense of they've been around since, as Nathan will reveal, since 1994. They broke up for a few years. Now they are back. New record on Bridge 9. Excitement is at its fever pitch for the band. And Nathan still had time to be like, yeah, I'll talk to you we could have honestly broken this up into a 2-show part, but I decided not to. So you're just going to get this massive bulk interview, and that's the way it's going to be. You'll notice one little caveat. During, about half an hour into our interview, I was so stupid, and for whatever reason, I decided to unplug the microphone that I'm talking to you in. And so what happened is it reverted to the microphone in my computer. So I'll go from sounding like this to sounding like I'm in the distance, and you can hear that I'm just talking in a room. So I apologize. That was me being fidgety, and I fucked up. And that was just a rookie mistake, and I apologize for that. But it really doesn't diminish the quality of what he is bringing forth, and the audio quality isn't terrible enough to where it's like, oh my God, this is unlistenable. So just wanted to put that out there. And that was not our editor's fault. He's going to try to polish that up to the best of his ability, but that's me. It's all on me. I take responsibility. Anyways, Nathan Gray, amazing dude. Like I said, we could have probably talked for about 3 hours, but I decided to not make that a marathon conversation, more specifically for him. So yeah, here's the talk. Talk to you afterwards. That's perfect. 98. I think that's shortly after A Day the Sun came out. And so you're at Showcase Theater in Corona, California. Mm-hmm. And I'm fairly certain that it's a headlining tour you guys are doing. So here's me, impressionable 18-year-old Ray Harkins, only getting the record maybe about a week before you guys came through the town.
Right. The Day the Sun went out.
Yes, exactly.
Is it a totally dick move to correct you on the title?
No.
Because you said came out,
and I don't want to be inaccurate with that, and that's absolutely a novice move on my part.
What an asshole!
The worst. But so
right. You are obviously the worst kind of person ever. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, this is perfect. I'd never seen you guys live before, and. Mm-hmm. I know that more than one person has probably told you this, but watching you guys play that night, it hit something in my brain that all of a sudden just, because at that time I had just started a band myself and we just started to play out in Southern California, and mm-hmm. my band didn't fit in with this sort of stuff that was happening in Orange County, your Throwdown 18 Visions and type of stuff like that. Right. And so watching what you guys were doing, I was just like, honestly, I was moved close to tears of just like, what? This is exactly what I think that band should be doing. And right. I think the next night you guys played in Santa Ana at Coos mm-hmm. Cafe. And I went to that show as well. And it was one of those things, like after those 2 shows, I was like, yo, I'm devoted to Boy Sets Fire for life. You got me. You got me for the rest of the night. So good job.
You drank the Kool-Aid. Way to go.
I did. Was that like a common experience for you guys during that time and obviously, preceding that, where it was like people had those sort of like epiphanies with Boy Sets Fire? Because I don't feel like you were a band that was like, oh yeah, I was just like casually into them. It's like you either got it or you did not.
Oh yeah, no, definitely one of those love or hate bands, and probably still are in a lot of areas. It's funny because I have to figure out what's the correct way to answer something like that, because I'd be like, oh yeah, fucking people blown away constantly by the Boy Sets Fire. It's like,
of course.
there's I hope a more humble approach to answering that. But it was really cool for us, but very interesting, because when Boys Sets Fire got started, and still has been since, there's this cult following.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bizarre because we're a band, as you know, but it's very bizarre that most shows, music is the last thing people bring up to us when they come up to us.
That's true.
Like, it's more like, you guys, I mean, and it's heavy shit. Like, you know, I was being beaten and raped for 10 years by my father, and your music got me through it. Like,
yeah,
that kind of shit, you know, where people, like, in these extraordinarily horrible situations, somehow found strength and meaning from what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times, like, seriously, we'd go back to the van and just sit there because we were drained emotionally from doing the show. But then shit people would say to us, like, we just shake our heads staring at each other like, what the fuck have we done?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
like, we were just going to play some music. Oh my God, now my heart hurts. I just want to go throw up and lay down for a while. Like,
that's totally true. I mean, I'm so glad that you went down that road, because I think it's something, especially when you're starting a band, when you're, you know, late teens, early 20s, like you don't have any cognition in regards to the fact that, yeah, heavy shit could be placed on you,
right.
Where it's like, wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's weird because especially when you're young, and everybody that's young wants to change the world. You know what I mean? That's just, it's ingrained in us. It's nature that you're supposed to feel that way because that's how society keeps moving and that's how evolution keeps moving. But still, sometimes you're not prepared for what you're going to get, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, we're going to change people's lives and change the world, and holy shit, we're doing it, and it's weird. You know? It's like, it's intense, like, and nobody at that age is ready for it. I mean, it definitely prepared me for a while. Like, and it's funny because I don't want this to sound disrespectful to anybody who's a fan of ours, but it actually got me prepared for a while. I was working as a employment counselor for people with special needs.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, not to say that our fans, you know, whatever, but
right.
I'm not trying to make that connection, but it definitely prepared me for social work to an extent, you know, that because shit gets really heavy within that arena and things you have to deal with and talk about and think about, especially like in special needs department, because oftentimes people are very untrained in those positions, and a lot of times abuse happens. It's rampant.
Right.
It's awful.
Yeah.
So dealing with sexual abuse, physical abuse, economical abuse, where people are stealing stuff from people's accounts, stuff like that, it's rampant. Happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of prepared me for that shock, you know, of people coming up at shows and just randomly laying the heaviest shit on me ever, you know.
Right.
So it's weird. Like, it was like this band that did social work. Like, and it was, and the only thing you could do, I mean, because how do you respond to that other than thank you, and I'm glad that helped. And you have to go into a weird mode with it, because you definitely, if someone's laying something that heavy on you, you don't want to go into, whoa, dude, why are you saying that to me? Or like into, oh, fuck, and act real nervous. So you have to mature real fucking quick.
Yeah.
You know, and learn how to take that shit and to at least not let the people who are telling you see how bad you're freaking out at that moment. You know, I think that in part it comes from Boys Sets Fire, and I wouldn't go deep into this, but just to give a brief account, members and everything, we're a pretty broken group of people, you know, and I think maybe that comes out in the music, you know, and the lyric. We've gone through a handful of very heavy times on our own then together, and I think when we got the band together, all those disorders and problems and issues, we put it out through the music, because that's what it's sort of like our psychologist couch, you know, psychiatric couch.
Sure.
so I guess maybe that helped people connect.
Yeah, it manifested itself in that way because, that was the, confluence of everybody's experience coming together, whether it was intentional or not. So to back things up, you personally, Boy Sets Fire waves the Newark, Delaware flag. Were you born and raised there?
I was born in Wilmington General, and was in Delaware. Now it is not a hospital anymore. It was torn down many years ago. I think probably because I was born there. But they're like, fuck that. Don't need any more of that coming out. Yeah, Wilmington General, and then I lived in Newark, Delaware, up until I was about 10 or 11, and then moved with my parents down to Florida, but came back. I always had to come back. You have those places that even if everyone else in the country or the world goes, what the fuck is Delaware?
Oh, yeah.
You have a connection. And so you just go back, and I love it here. So that's why I'm still here.
Yeah. I always loved the idea of when bands, had this very large sense of pride about where they came from. Like, I mean, you obviously don't see that with Delaware because there's no bands that come from Delaware, but like,
Right. And that's what George Thorogood, motherfucker.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry. You and George Thorogood, right. Obviously.
Yeah. Obviously, we're very influenced by him. So it's funny because I think we did that very purposefully as somewhat tongue-in-cheek, because most people who cited where they're from had a reason.
Right. That's true.
It's like New Jersey or New York or, wherever, L.A. or something. I mean, they had a reason to say where they're from. Us, we had no goddamn reason to fucking tote Newark, Delaware,
Yeah.
And it was sort of a fun sort of tongue-in-cheek thing. And it is sort of funny that how many things as a serious political band, quote unquote, tongue-in-cheek shit we got away with.
Yeah.
In the things we did, and that nobody picked up on because they were too focused on the serious side, which we never got, but it was like, okay, cool. Well, whatever people grasp onto, that's fine. But,
Right.
But, yeah, it was just sort of cool. Plus, we're pretty proud of where we were from. And when we got together, we did make it a point to put Delaware on the map to an extent because most of the bands, great bands, started in Delaware. There's a lot of great bands that started back in the day and probably are still going in Delaware that never get the fuck out.
Yeah.
They don't tour. They don't do anything. It's like, guys, what the fuck? Okay, well, fuck it. So we made a very specific, determined move. We were touring immediately. We were getting the fuck out of here. We were doing something with this band.
Yeah.
We're not just going to sit around, play the local bars, and just fucking give up.
Right.
It's just too many bands have done that, and we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So
well,
that was part of the motivation, was to say, hey, we're from here and we're doing it.
Sure. And so what was your family structure like? Do you have brothers and sisters, and what were your parents doing?
I was and am and always have been a single child. My dad is a pastor, and which is very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's something there.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely something there. It's actually really funny because people have confused Boy Sets Fire with being a Christian band in the past and even recently. And I think it might have something to do with being raised around that stuff a lot.
Sure. To
where some of the words I use get mistaken. You know what I mean? It's sort of churchy talk sometimes.
Sure.
When actually I'm speaking out against it. But anyway, I'll back up real quick. So I was raised by my mom and dad. I had a very strong family. My mom and my dad, we grew up incredibly fucking poor. Shack fucking house falling apart. I found pictures of my old house and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I look at it, I was like, I didn't know it was that bad.
Yeah.
Because at the time, it's funny because I always had a very strong family. My parents had a lot of pride in themselves and our family. And, I remember even if the house was a shack, a crappy little piece of shit, and there was plaster falling off the walls, it was immaculately clean, and I remember my parents would, go to Goodwill or wherever, they'd get my clothes, and they were always like really nice. And I always had to tuck my shirt in to go to school. I'd get my ass kicked constantly because I looked like an asshole.
Right.
It was like public school, everybody's trying to be cool, and I go in there looking all fucking dressed up like I'm going to church.
Right.
but at the same time, it built a lot of respect for myself, you know?
Sure.
As ass kickings will do sometimes.
Right. The way that you know, your parents, even though they obviously didn't have the financial means to provide for you, they wanted to, you know, they took that responsibility seriously. Cause like, obviously you see a lot of kids that are raised in, you know, poor family situations from a monetary standpoint. And they don't have a sense of pride because that wasn't given to them, because that wasn't something their parents afforded to them. So it's great. It's great that you had that experience.
Yeah. And I would directly link it to my grandparents, my parents' parents. My dad growing up, although, you know, I love my mom, my papa, not the greatest dude in the world. And my dad had a pretty rough deal with that growing up and got into drugs, all this stuff in his early days, which, you know, most people that find God and stuff, they go through a bunch of shit first. When he met my mom, my grandfather, my mom's dad, sort of became his surrogate father in a lot of ways, and did for a lot of people. And it's hard because I'll go on a rant and I'll just start bragging about my grandfather forever. But he died recently, and you could tell the effect he had on people. The place was fucking packed, you know, like just it. And I accredit a lot of my family life to him, because he took my father under, and I would say made him the man he is.
That's incredible. I mean, he sounds like obviously one of those sort of salt of the earth, pillar of the community, like one of those guys that everybody went to for everything and anything, and he would always say yes.
It was, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you could have heard the speeches given, you know, it was incredible. It was a very touching moment when he died, to have people come up and say all the things that you knew he was. Yeah. You know, and being brought up in that environment. And it's funny because being brought up in that environment with, and to be honest, my grandparents, my parents, very conservative Christians. But, and me being this crazed, whatever the fuck I am, you know, I didn't grow up in that weird, oppressive environment that a lot of people grow up in when they are part of this type of family. I grew up in a very open family. You were allowed to debate anything. And when you were done debating, you had to shut the fuck up and be family, you know? And there was no, this is how it's going to be, and this is how you believe, and this is how you have to do it. You know, there was a point in my childhood where I was required to go to church with them until I reached a certain age. Then I was allowed to do whatever the fuck I wanted to an extent, you know? And it was cool being brought up in that environment. And I think that's actually what inspired my activism, or my, you know, my belief system and things like that, is that my family, although they have a very different viewpoint than I do, it was more important to teach me to think for myself than it was for them to instill their values. Yeah,
that's huge. Like, that is such a, like you said, that's something that isn't typically afforded to that experience. And so for you,
to anyone really,
that's
you know what
true.
I mean? It's crazy. Like, I remember, it actually pissed me off sometimes, because I remember when you're a kid and you're trying to be rebellious, and like, and your parents won't let you do something, you're like, man, my parents won't let me do this. And then you realize, like, other kids are like getting beaten up and fucking, you know, all this shit. And you're like, God damn it.
I don't have it bad.
Cool. Yeah, it just fucking sucks. Like, other people are getting kicked out of their house. I remember I couldn't try to get kicked out of my house. Like, I could do everything in my power. And I swear, one time my dad came real close, because I remember he gripped me up and almost knocked me the fuck out. But he didn't. But he pushed that poor man. I still apologize to this day to that guy for shit I did. And I remember him, like, sitting me down and actually, like, saying, "You're never going to get kicked out.
Yeah,
like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
stop trying." Like, he knew what was going on. It's like, I love you. You're not going anywhere.
Right.
Like,
that's incredible.
You know, if you reach a certain age and you need to go out and do your own thing, then that's fine. but I'm not going to kick you out.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So
it was a great life. It's funny because, looking back, at the time, obviously I didn't appreciate a lot of it because no kid does.
no.
But when you look back, it's like, fuck, I had an awesome life.
Yeah.
Like, we were fucking broke as shit, but fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
But because you don't have perspective, and that's all that really, that's
exactly.
what.
Yeah.
And so as you started to get into, so were you down in Florida for what I would consider your formative years, as far as like going to high school and stuff like that?
Yeah. For most of it, I did my my senior year back up here.
Okay.
Actually in Maryland, right over the border from Delaware.
Okay.
But most of my formative years, were in Florida, in Pensacola, Florida.
And why did you guys move down there?
Well, my mom and dad were both going to theological college down there, and my dad was a deacon in this church, and we lived in a trailer park on the property of the church.
Nice. So it was just an opportunity that you guys had to take.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
And so as you started to, enter high school, and obviously, because, that's what, those 4 years is what really kind of starts to define a person as far as like what they get into and all that type of stuff. Like, because I imagine it was a confluence of a lot of things where it was like, I'm sure that's kind of when you started to get into independent music. And then I'm sure that's where you started to question the belief system that you were raised with, or maybe that was even younger. So how'd you navigate all that?
There were two things that changed my life forever. One was finding punk music. The first band, I believe, was Black Flag, because I was listening to metal at the time and just whatever came on the radio. And this guy, Gordon, I went to school with, I always remember him because he's a fucking weirdo, but he gave me a tape of In My Head by Black Flag. And then just every once in a while would give me other bands to listen to. And it completely threw me on my ass. I was like, this is amazing. It's fucking just raw energy and hate. It's just like fucking awesome. It was just rebellious and creative and catchy in its own way, Mm-hmm. And it was that built my musical path. And then I will never forget what changed my political path. Was I was looking in a Time magazine, and there was a picture of Abbie Hoffman in his American flag shirt. And I was like, who the fuck is that dude? And it went through this sort of story about Abbie Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, and the Yippies and stuff like that in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And I was like, holy shit, why have I not heard of this? This is awesome. Just this whole movement that was political, but at the same time, satire and fun and just exciting and rebellious and just funny at the same time. Mm-hmm. And somewhat violent and crazy and just, it was just awesome. So I started researching Abbie Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, these guys, the court cases they went through, all that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. And it definitely politicized me. It made me feel that there was something more. And that there was a way, because I was always the class clown, so it just sort of resonated,
Yeah.
That, I already have that youthful rebellion, plus I like to make people laugh and just have fun, so fuck, this is it,
Yeah, you're like, this kind of summarizes who I am in this this movement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny, because the two defining moments in my life was finding, and, one was earlier in my life, one was later in my life, but the two defining people that I found in my life were, I was just thinking how funny it would be right now if I said Jesus, but
Perfect.
Two defining people, my Lord Jesus Christ and Abbie Hoffman. No, it was Abbie Hoffman. And then one day, after all of my religious upbringing and my fear of certain things, finally picking up a copy of the Satanic Bible and reading Anton LaVey, mm-hmm. and just going, that's it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same fucking thing as Abbie Hoffman.
Right.
Except with religion.
Right.
The guy is fucking with people, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. And creating thought, creating anger, and comedy all at the same fucking time. And it charged me again, you know? So I would say,
And was this all during like high school? Is like when your head started to get kind of cracked open with this stuff?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Got it.
And it just, it really changed a lot of the ways I thought and approached life and approached the world around me.
Yeah, I love the way that you're describing it. Sorry to interrupt, but I just love because it's it really it totally does. Like when you have that sort of epiphany, like whatever you're exposed to, whatever, like, I mean, I can specifically remember like when I was, 12 years old and watching the first Rage Against the Machine video of like, of being like, oh, the world isn't all right. And just having having that singular thought and exactly what you were saying, where it's like, oh my God, like they're talking about religion and satire and all these things that resonate with me. And that everything that you knew previously is just kind of like in the dust. It's like, well, that was me.
Yeah. Complete bullshit from there on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just incredible.
It was funny because, growing up in a Christian household and everything and going to church at a fairly young age, I mean, I had the fear, the devil and demons and all that kind of shit. And I don't think it was mostly inspired from my parents as much as it was from the institutions we involved ourselves in. When I finally read Anton LaVey, it was funny because later down the road, I read Peter Gilmore, who, is the new head of Satanic Church or whatever. And we had the same experience, although, he actually personally knew Anton LaVey. It was like, I did the same thing. I was in church, all that stuff. I was like, where the fuck are the unicorns and the hobbits? This is ridiculous.
Right.
Like, none of this shit makes sense. And when I always thought, well, I guess I'm agnostic or atheist or something like that. And I read that book and I was like, oh, I'm a Satanist. Okay. Oh, I had no idea there was a book written just for me.
Right.
This all makes sense to me. Like, finally, somebody put it into something.
Right. And I love also that, when you do have that experience, how you really do feel like it's just so singular, where it's like, dude, this, like, I just got into something that fucking no one else knows about. Like,
right.
Holy shit.
But then it's really funny, too, when you have to, I mean, I think you run into this in the political spectrum and in the more, religious, whatever spectrum. But what makes it feel more singular, which is, it's a detriment and a positive to some extent, is especially with, like Anton LaVey and Satanism and not theistic, more of an atheistic Satanism, is then having to deal with the other people.
Yeah.
Because you're only going to find a minority of people that are really, really get it, and then you're going to have a bunch of people that have some weird Viking Dungeons and Dragons thing that go along with it. That's just like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on. No, let's not. You changed your name to say, really? Oh, God.
Right. Like you've taken it to a point where I just, you don't seem to get what I'm getting out of this.
Right. I'm getting this beautiful satire and like this, like,
yeah.
What the fuck is going on? Like, it's the same thing in, with the political world and stuff like that. You get those people that are just so serious all the time.
Right.
And so politically correct. And, I hate to use politically correct in a bad way because people do that all the time in the same annoying way that people are politically correct. You know what I mean?
Right.
Basically, people who are quote unquote more politically correct are annoying, but then the people that just use it as a way to say racist shit, you know what I mean? Like,
totally. Like,
it's just an excuse for them to like say fucked up shit by being anti-PC, so, whatever.
Your parents, like you said, they were, I mean, I wouldn't say they were supportive, but they were just like, well, like Nathan is doing what Nathan is doing. Like we'll still love him. Like, was there a lot of stress?
Yeah. Well, there was definitely butting of heads. I mean, there's no doubt, you know what I mean? Like getting into stuff like that. My dad grew up in that era with Abbie Hoffman and stuff. And he definitely not that type of dude, like very conservative, stuff like that. So that kind of thing was not his thing whatsoever. And plus being a strident Christian, he's not going to dig the atheist and the Satanist shit.
Not at all.
It's just not. That's going to be an affront, But I think he understood my curiosity because, and allowed it to an extent, but he wouldn't allow it without me having to explain to a T what I was thinking and why.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what was cool about it, is that it wasn't, he also, I had a copy of Mein Kampf because I was curious.
Right.
I wanted to read it, and he came in my room and he found it. And as opposed to most families, especially with Jewish heritage like we have, would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Instead, he came in, he put it down. He was like, okay, I see you're interested in this. Explain why.
I'm sure from your perspective too, obviously being a parent, like it's easy to have that knee-jerk reaction to be like, what the fuck are you doing? But like to be able to like kind of step outside yourself and be like, okay, I'm not going to let this bother me. We'll just talk this out. And that's incredible.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I mean, he would definitely let it bother him sometimes, but it was productive.
Mm-hmm.
It was always productive. It was always like, I'm angry. This angers me. You need to explain why you're doing it and what's going on, but he let me talk, and that's what the best part about it is, that I could talk, but I had to be able to defend myself.
Right.
And it really helped me with my skills in debating and things like that, where I will not debate something if I don't have a good knowledge of what I'm debating.
Sure.
And it's great because people open their stupid mouths all the time on shit they don't know.
Constantly. Totally.
And I think it was really great that my dad instilled that and a sense of honesty to be able to know when I'm over my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's...
And just go throw in the cards and like, yeah, okay, I don't know enough. I'm going to go learn.
Yeah. When did the idea of obviously like wanting to play in a band, like, because and I'm going to be very mad if this is the case, that Boy Sets Fire was your first band, like, that you ever played a show with. So no,
it definitely wasn't.
Okay, good. I was going to be pissed if it was. So
I'm glad you started it with that, because even if it was, after you saying that, I would have said no. I would have made up some bands.
That's perfect. I like that.
I had, when I lived in Florida, what really got me started is I started a couple of just shitty bands here and there that didn't do anything. Then I started a band called Second Nature, and I think actually my ex-wife, my son's mom, has the videotape at her house. I need to get that back from her some point. It's from 99, 98. No, it's not that. Oh, what the fuck am I talking about? Because Boy Sets Fire started in 94. So it was like 89 or 90, somewhere in there.
Okay. I
had this band called Second Nature. And we played at this place called the Night Owl all the time in Florida. And there's a show that I have on videotape of us playing, and it is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
I have no shirt on. I've got this really long fucking ponytail with the sides and back shaved.
Amazing.
Oh yeah, I had that fucking haircut.
Well, during that time, I mean, that was like pre Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers. So you were kind of a trendsetter.
I was trailblazing, motherfucker.
Amazing.
I remember the style was always at that point where we was to have long hair with it shaved underneath, and you would always wear two T-shirts. I do not know why that was the style.
Yeah.
You'd have like a smaller T-shirt and a bigger T-shirt over top of it.
I remember. Well,
no clue.
Yeah. Well, I think that's partially because no bands ever made shirts. I mean, or beyond. Large was the
point.
Large was the smallest shirt, because I always look back in my shirt collection of when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I'm like, dude, why the fuck was I wearing extra large shirts when I was clearly when I was clearly a medium? But then I'm like, oh, that's right, because they no one cared about shirts that fit you in the 90s. Like, that wasn't a thing.
No, that was the style. It was sort of like, it was weird. It was almost like hip hop culture, you know what I mean? Like,
it totally was. Yeah.
Big baggy pants, big long shirts, and it's funny because now, like, I'll see people that are into hip hop and stuff with their pants down around their ass and a long shirt, and be like, "What the? Oh, wait a minute!
Yeah,
I did that. I did that before you." when I was skateboarding and fucking
Yeah, like that doesn't make it any better that I did it before you, but I did it before you.
But I did, and I have no right to criticize you now.
Exactly.
Just because I wear pants that fit now, and actually that just makes me sound like an old man.
Yeah. Oh, I like to wear stuff that fits me now. So
That's Grandpa.
Oh, totally. So basically, once you got back from high school, or once you went back to Delaware for your senior year, did you have plans to go to college, and like what was your sort of like eye for the future?
Yeah, my parents were so disappointed in my choices. Like, I mean, honestly, I just wanted to be the class clown, and fuck off forever.
Uh-huh.
You know, I just wanted to be that person, and I did it. And
did you actually get that notification in your high school yearbook where it's like, hey, Nathan Gray, class clown?
I did not, and probably only because nobody got the jokes.
Okay.
I spent most of my time getting the shit kicked out of me for it, so I doubt they were going to honor me.
Okay.
You know?
Got it.
But it was not your normal sense of humor, I don't think. Plus, when I was in 12th grade, it was during the first Gulf War with George Bush Sr., and I did a lot of anti-that shit, you know, at that point. And also, I was bold enough in Northeast Maryland, which Northeast Maryland, you're not going to know, but is very close to Rising Sun and stuff. It's a very redneck area. It's very... The birth of the Klan in this area was in Rising Sun, Maryland, which was very close.
Okay.
So it's sort of backwoods to an extent. So I remember getting my ass kicked a lot, but
right.
I remember, you know, I did not see the point, as some kids do at this age, with the whole Pledge of Allegiance thing.
Right.
It didn't connect to me. I was just, why? We're at school. The fuck do I have to do that for?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big deal. And, you know, I started this whole petition that, you know, if you don't want to, you can just sit down and not do it, you know? And it caused a huge uproar. And it really confused me and really made me want to fight harder, because there's such a non-laid-back approach to stuff like that with people. And it weirded me out, because, like, if somebody wants to think a different way, I don't really give a fuck. Okay, go be that person. I don't care.
Right.
Like, are you punching me in the face? I don't care. Fuck it. But, you know, it was called a distraction and all this stuff. It's like, actually, the distraction is when you put me out of the classroom. That's way more distracting than me just sitting there.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, that was when I was young, got into all that kind of shit, got my butt kicked a lot from people. I remember actually sitting in the guidance counselor's office with this huge dude that he just beat the living fuck out of me, and he's the one fucking crying because his dad's in Iraq, all this stuff. And so I'm sitting here counseling this, like, I'm like, dude, no, that's not how I meant it. That's, you know,
right.
And you just beat the fuck out of me.
Right.
Like, we could have had this talk beforehand, and I could not have a black eye.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That would have been a lot more fun. Next time, could you just break down crying and explain why you want to beat me up?
Yeah.
Then we can talk about it before you do that, because that hurt.
Right. When did Boy Sets Fire come into your life in regards to the fact that you were like, okay, like obviously I'm not going to college, like I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do, but you know, playing in a band is kind of what I feel I think I should do.
Right, and that's, you know, it's a horrible decision for anyone.
Oh, terrible! Absolutely terrible.
Yeah, absolutely terrible. Don't ever decide to do that with your life. It sucks. And I say that not only out of helping people, but also out of greed, because you're flooding the market. Cut it out. Stop making bands. There's enough.
We don't need competition.
No more competition, please. Especially with, you know, the internet and everything. It's just too fucking easy.
Yeah.
So anyway, point being, so, you know, after high school, all that kind of shit, I actually tried to move back down to Florida to hang out with my bandmates from before. It didn't work out, so I moved back up. And at this point, I was about 19, 20. I got married. My wife got pregnant with Simon, who's my son. He's 19 now.
I'm gonna have to assume that wasn't your son is a gift, so to speak. That there wasn't an
Yeah.
Okay.
And funny enough, it did happen after we got married, though. Very soon after we got married, but it did happen after we got married, which is, that's the shocker. for anyone to get married that fucking early, somebody better be fucking pregnant.
Right.
Like, that was fucking stupid. Like,
right.
But it's funny because I'm glad for it, not only because I got a son out of the situation,
Mm-hmm.
but also because, when she and I got divorced, actually my fiance and I now are really good friends with her and her husband.
Oh.
So it's sort of cool. You lost the wife, but you gained a friend, which is what we should have been in the first place.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. But you obviously you don't have the wherewithal to understand that when you're, in your early 20s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, we're just partying, having fun, and let's get married. I proposed naked in a bathtub. If that gives you any idea of where I was at the time. I was fucking fear and loathing Las Vegas style, just fucking losing my mind, which is where you should be at that age,
That sounds incredible.
Yeah. So, you married me. I've done a lot of drugs and I'm out of my head drunk. Fuck it. Why not? I'm an idiot.
Perfect.
I'm 20. That makes sense. Like, fucking shoot me.
Yeah. Did you get married in Florida or you got married in Delaware?
No, in Delaware.
Okay.
In Delaware. It was right around that time. I think Simon was one. I think he was one when I started that band. Because actually then I had two bands before Boy Sets Fire in Delaware. When I came back, I started a band called Nine.
Okay.
And I hope we can find the demos sometimes. It's sort of just like a fun pop punk like sort of band. Sort of like the Casting Out that I did for a little bit.
Oh, sure.
Is that same kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And what detracted me from that band is that they didn't give a shit at all. They didn't want to tour. They didn't want to do anything with their life. They didn't care about politics, and anything I wrote about that had any kind of social or political statement, they'd sort of laugh at me about it.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of make fun of me about it. So this is the direct line into Boy Sets Fire, which it always makes me laugh now because you sometimes you are handed those moments in life where you get to look back and go, remember when you were laughing at me for that? Yeah, fuck you.
Yeah.
How's your life doing? Not good. All right. Awesome.
Sure.
Josh and Chad actually formed Boy Sets Fire. I had no part in the actual beginning stages of it.
Sure.
They were hanging out. They're married to sisters. So they were hanging out together. And I was friends with both of them. I went to high school, my 12th grade year in Northeast Maryland. I went with Chad. And Josh and I were actually friends since birth. Our parents were friends before we were even born.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So we came up together. They were sitting on the front porch talking about, we need to do a band from Delaware that fucking does something, that talks about something, that makes things happen,
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, their first thought was, let's get Nathan,
Mm-hmm.
because I was fucking miserable. And it was a great phone call because Josh called me and was like, hey, I know you're doing a band right now. Chad and I are about to do this thing. And he explained it. And I went, let's do it. I'll call him right now and break it up. I do not give a fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And to be in it with my two best friends in the world, like Chad and Josh have been my best friends ever. They're my brothers,
Uh-huh.
So it was like, oh, fuck yeah, we're going to do that. So I got in touch with the other guys and was like, see ya, have fun with that.
Right.
Took off, and I think they lasted maybe a week longer with some other guy, and it just fizzled out.
Sure.
Because I'm that awesome.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, we just lost the most talented singer since Prince, so sorry.
Good luck with that.
so as
I am going to, by the way, I am going to write what you just said on a plaque and hang it in my house because that was fucking awesome.
Good. You can use that as your pull. You can just contact Bridge 9 real quick. You can use that as your pull quote for your marketing sticker.
That is fucking perfect. That was probably the best compliment I've ever gotten in my life, even if it was joking.
Good.
Fucking great.
Good. I'm glad I could give that to you. No problem. During the course of when Boy Sets Fire started to become sort of, nationally recognized, the 90s was obviously so much more, I guess, politically charged when you look at bands, within the scene, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so obviously it was like a thing. Like when a band said something in between songs, it was a thing. So like, did you find yourself in the band obviously feeling like we were joking about earlier, like the level of competition where it's like people were trying to out politicize themselves, like saying saying the most progressive things ever, and like,
geez, don't I know it?
Right. And so,
let me speak to that real quick because it was funny because we were not prepared for the shit people were going to be saying. We very progressive political people. We're practical. We're very practical about what we believe.
Right.
I remember, we got a lot of our stuff from, I know for me, lyrically, Bad Religion and Born Against were my two favorites. Musically worlds apart, lyrically very similar, but both very good bands. And I remember coming up in that time period, we were looked down on for how we acted and who we were. We had politics, but we were, to a lot of these people, very conservative. I remember being called the rednecks of hardcore before.
Wow.
We were not vegan. We smoked. We drank. We had fun. We had sex. Like, it was fucked up to people. Like, we were hypocrites, and we wore the badge. They would call us hypocrites. We were like, "You're right, and so are you."
No, that's really,
we're all fucking hypocrites here.
That's really interesting because I definitely did feel, because I mean, I myself, like, I'm vegan and straight edge, and like that obviously that was something that started when I was 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And so I definitely remember when you guys, I mean, especially it was like around after the eulogy came out, where it's like I felt personally like what you guys were doing was, and not because of how you were presenting it, but you were doing something that was larger than the quote unquote scene. The scene is obviously, and I use that in quotes, like it's very insular. It's like, the vegan straight edge, the vegan straight edge bands will play in front of the vegan straight edge kids, and we'll get that we'll get that message out to -4 people.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So I felt, I definitely felt like, like I said, especially around that time.
-4 is a great number because it is actually true. Because it will actually change some people to the other side.
Totally, to 100%. And so that's, even though, like, I knew, it's like, obviously I knew you guys didn't waive those other philosophical standpoints. I did feel like it was, for lack of a better term, like legitimate. I didn't feel like it was like, oh, Boys It's Fire is a total affront to everything that I believe, So, but that I could easily see where people would react the opposite way, where it's like, oh, fuck those guys.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, like, it was I felt like I was playing shows with my grandparents sometimes. Like, it was so fucking, like, strict and, like, really, guys?
Yeah.
You think we can just go have some beers and fuck? Like, do we have to do this all day?
Right.
Like, I have great stories about, it's playing with other bands. I would never name them, but them just trying to be intense all the time. Like, we'd go back and stay at somebody's house, and we're drinking beers and having fun, hitting on girls because we're young and stupid, and they're, like, in the corner reading poetry. Like, dude, fuck you. Like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, for Christ's sake. Like,
right.
I don't even care, like, if you're not going to drink or whatever, but come have fun. Like, it's just stupid. And I just remember we were not ashamed of ourselves. We weren't, we were just doing what we did and had fun. And there were what was supposedly derogatory quotes towards us that we took as badges of honor, and just went, we have a belief system, but we're not swallowing your bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember playing at this, one of the many More Than Music festivals where there was this, oh my God, I can't even believe, like, as I'm saying it, how insane it was. Like, there was this circle, and I think it was led by that band Race Trader at the time. It was just so convoluted and silly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a bunch of fucking dirty white kids sitting around talking about how bad it was to be white and, like, how privileged they were and shit. And, like, oh, we're terrible people. And it's like, I remember Josh and I, like, sitting there, like, I don't feel like a bad person. I feel all right about myself. Like, there's some shit we need to go change, but I don't have a car. I'm poor as shit. Like, we got to put food on the table for our kids just like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I really don't feel bad. I just don't. Like, not only that, but, you can throw the fucking race card around all you want, but you're still a white kid with fucking dreads.
Right.
You know? And not only that, but there's still plenty of people who are black that are way better off than you, and it's about fucking class. It's not about fucking race. Those things intermingle, sure. And we can talk about that, but I'm not going to sit around and have a pity party about how privileged I am.
Yeah.
It's fucking horse shit.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's really interesting too, because I mean, I personally was unaware of the fact that, I mean, you know, yourself and obviously I imagine other members of Boy Sets Fire, like you guys had quote unquote real world responsibilities back home in the sense of, you know, there were families and children that were like, so it wasn't. I think obviously with that comes a tempered sense of reality where it's just like you said, you're realistic about your political beliefs. And so it's obviously much easier to be idealistic and, you know, a freegan when you're, when you're dumpster diving when you're 20 years.
When you're a fucking trust fund kid.
Right.
It's fucking simple. You know what I mean? And I've got nothing against those people. Like, It's funny because, like, I've got nothing against, like, if you're handed everything in life, please accept it.
Yeah.
Like, accept that you're handed everything in life and be happy about it.
Right, and do something.
The second you get depressed about it, you're an asshole.
Totally. And on that same point, you can also do something positive with that. I mean, it's great that you're active within this, you know, independent subculture, but you know, but use what you have to your advantage.
And you know what? Go home. Your parents love you.
Yeah.
Fucking cut it out. Stop fucking panhandling for me, you fucking dick. There's people out there that actually need the fucking money.
Right.
You fucking asshole. Like, it drives me insane. And feed your dog while you're fucking at it.
Totally.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So, you know, we came up in that atmosphere, and it was just so oppressive and weird. I was like, I feel like I'm going to church again.
Right.
Like, what the fuck is this? Like, I'm in my early 20s. Can I just have a beer and get laid? Like, honestly, like, and that was a point I know got me in a lot of trouble a lot of times when I was younger, is that I never saw the point in being ashamed of liking sex. And that was a weird thing during the early hardcore days.
Totally.
Where it was like everybody was being accused of rape and everything was wrong and sex was dirty, and I felt like I was in church again.
Yeah.
And it was like, if I'm somewhere and a cute girl looks at me and wants to have sex, I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Right.
Like that I can be somewhere and someone thinks I'm attractive and they want to do it to me. Word?
Right.
That's cool. Like, because I grew up in the school system and all that shit where I was nobody. You know what I mean? Nobody gave a fuck who I was.
Right.
You know? It's just the same thing as how I take interviews now. Because, like, who the hell gave a fuck back in the day what I was saying?
Right.
People actually give a fuck? Awesome. Thank you for caring.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
But anyway, the point being is that we just saw things a lot different and from a more practical sense.
Sure.
To where we're human beings and this is how we are. And I think, you know, a lot of my belief systems and what drew me to, like I was saying, Anton LaVey and stuff like that, helped in those situations.
Right.
You know, being more practical and realizing that I'm a human animal, basically, you know?
You felt like you had a leg to stand on, and that's important, obviously.
Yeah. And I think that probably the only other person that I know I talked to at the time that I would give incredibly huge props to right now for just blowing the minds of those little fucking self-absorbed pussies was Sean Ingram from Coalesce.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He was beautiful. Like, it was just amazing to watch that guy work.
Yeah.
Like he would go in and destroy every sacred cow, every fucking, like, pent up fucking little asshole. He'd just tear them apart. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and we'd sit there and talk about, you know, he and I would get along and we'd just sit there and talk about stuff because it was awesome to have someone that felt the same way, you know? And, you know, as another, you know, Mamiya Abu Jamal fucking booth gets set up for something they're never going to do anything about, you know? It just,
right. No, for sure.
It was funny, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
to have a partner in crime to fuck with these people with.
Yeah, well, it's important. You feel like you're a sense of community that way. And so with because obviously once a good head of steam started to happen with Boy Sets Fire, and obviously once you guys had sort of made an impact, and obviously like Victory Records came along, I remember distinctly in my own head that being kind of the first time that I remember a band within the independent scene kind of like getting quote unquote heat, like from an industry perspective, where it was like, wow, like someone, all these labels are trying to sign Boy Sets Fire. And it was like, as that was swirling around you guys, was it just like so completely overwhelming that you were just like, wow, I don't know what the fuck we're going to do. Like, let's try this.
It was mostly overwhelming because the second we stopped playing just basements to 5 people, we were sellouts. And it didn't matter if we were sticking to our guns or not. What mattered was labels, and what mattered was the amount of people that would come see you. And at that second, you were a sellout. Mm-hmm. And it was at that moment we decided, well, then that's what we fucking are. We're going to be who we are. We're going to be true to ourselves. We're going to sign to stuff, and we're going to do stuff that we feel is right. And those people can call us sellouts all they like. And that's when we really realized how fucking bullshit the term hardcore family can be.
Oh, yeah.
Because they want you to tout their family, hardcore, as if it's the best thing that's ever happened. But when it really comes down to it, they'll turn their back on you in a fucking second. That was our experience. I know other people have had other experiences, and people get down on me when I talk any kind of shit on hardcore, which I think proves my point.
Sure.
Is that people are blind to the fact that subcultures like that can be negative as well as positive.
Totally.
And if we're not honest with ourselves, then the same bullshit keeps happening. Mm-hmm. And we have to be honest with ourselves that subcultures need to evolve, and they need to look at themselves and criticize themselves and realize what needs to change. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that had to change. And this would be my point, is that the fact that hardcore was unable to evolve, because it was already an evolved thing. Hardcore was a beautiful thing at the time because you could have the Promise Ring, Damnation, and Split Lip play at the same time.
Right. And that was
got a metal band, a pop band, and a country band playing at the same time called hardcore. Like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? You don't have that anymore. And that was the beauty of what was called hardcore, is that it was that open, awesome thing, that it was about your ethics and your stance and what you were doing more than about the style of music. And we ruined it because we took it too seriously, and we started attacking those who strayed,
Sure.
Instead of going, okay, that's cool, you guys go do your thing, we're going to stay here and do this.
Mm-hmm.
We started attacking.
Right.
And what made it more ridiculous is that there were so many more important things out there. There was a war going on. There were several wars going on while punk zines were talking about who's selling out now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Well, let me tell you, some kid that just stepped on a fucking landmine in Somalia could give a fuck if your favorite band sold out.
Right. No, totally.
Let's go talk to him about it. You know, like,
yeah, it's inconsequential when it comes from that perspective, and it's so funny because
that doesn't. What sucks about it is that we didn't realize that was inconsequential, but we also didn't realize that hardcore could be something more.
Yeah.
And it could continue to evolve, and it could continue to become something that wasn't just some weird little cult.
Right.
That it was and could become even more. And we let it down. We let it down. We let ourselves down, and that sucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Well, we allowed bands. Basically, when bands went for the money, that was our fault.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did not support those bands.
Sure.
You know what I mean? People did not, within the hardcore, and I keep myself in that community, we did not do what we could to keep what it was underground and DIY and help bands to do that. Because the second they would ask for anything
mm-hmm.
to keep themselves alive, we'd call them a sellout.
Sure.
So they had no choice.
Right.
They're like, well, fuck, I got to feed a family, and this is my art, and this is what I love. I don't want a normal job. I can't. I will shoot myself in the face. Like, if I have to get something else. Like, I have to be happy.
Yeah, no, and it struck me, even obviously as like, a fan of what you guys have done over the years, where it was like, it seemed like every move that you made was just a logical next step progression. Even like, obviously, when people looked at the move you guys did when you signed, obviously, with Wind Up, where it was just like, what the fuck is this band doing? But it's just like, well, what are they going to do now? They released. Right. They released a critically acclaimed and very popular sales-wise record with Victory, who was obviously the largest independent label at that time. What are you going to do after that?
Yeah, and that, yeah.
You have to look at it like, I mean, a band that I always cite anytime anybody is looking at the idea of, sellouts, which is such a, that term doesn't even mean anything to me anymore. It's like,
it's such a bullshit term.
Totally. Yeah. It's like I look at a band like Rise Against, and I don't think anybody who ever can look at the lineage of that band and look at who the individuals that comprise that band, none of them can look at them and be like, oh yeah, they're sellouts. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, they're playing in front of 10,000 people talking about very politically charged messages, and also promoting, straight edge, vegetarianism, veganism, like all these ideas that kids would never fucking hear. That's great.
Right. Yeah.
And that's exactly, what obviously you guys were trying to do as well.
And plus, even more importantly, they're doing what they want to do with their lives.
Totally.
And for fuck's sake, like, if you don't like it, go do something else. Like, start a band and go be different.
Right. For sure.
Like, it's not that difficult. Just let people do what they need to do.
Right. Was the business side of the band pretty overwhelming for you guys? Just because, I mean,
yeah. And that's why I can't listen to Tomorrow Come Today anymore.
Sure.
Like, it sucks. I hate it.
Yeah.
I love playing songs off of it live.
Right.
Because they sound raw and good again.
Yeah.
On that album. Oh, I wish I could find Jay Baumgartner and fucking feed him arsenic. I hate that man. And I would never talk shit on Wind Up.
Sure.
Only because of the fact that they, what was really cool about them is that they let us out of our contract when they knew it wasn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
When it was like obvious that, guys, this isn't working. They let us out of our contract, and they were actually awesome about it. Like,
yeah.
they could have made us, they could have broke us. They could have very easily been like, well, fuck you, you owe us millions of dollars now, or at least $1 million, and we would have been fucked, and you would have never heard from us again. But they actually were like, okay, cool, you're out, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so I'm
you
pretty
can't,
thankful to them.
Totally. You can't look at that scenario and be like, oh, well, they dropped the ball because they didn't place a full page ad in Spin or whatever. It's like, no, they let us out of our contract. Like, that's great. It was a business relationship that didn't work, and there we go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we got treated in a more than fair manner. That it's funny, and it's sort of what I tell people now. Like, if they bitch about labels and shit like that, well, you got yourself into the fucking situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel about myself. I wish I could take back ever signing with that label. And it's not because of anything they did necessarily. They just did what I should have known they were going to do.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. They were playing the game.
Totally.
And they were meant to play the game.
Yeah, they looked at your band and they said, "Oh, this is something that we can potentially make money off of." And like, not in
it's viable for that
reason.
And for us, we were not able to make the compromises that they wanted us to make. And we should have known beforehand that we were not able to make those compromises.
Yeah.
We knew ourselves, and we didn't think. We thought that, we would just write that hit and they would be happy with us and it'd be all right,
Right.
But we were not going to write that hit, and we were not going to have people help us write, there were things we weren't going to do covers to try to get in the market or whatever the fuck kind of bullshit, weird shit they talk about that I don't understand. And we didn't understand what we were doing. And that was our fault.
Yeah.
And fuck it. We learned a great lesson. And now we're doing the complete opposite and doing it the way we feel it should be done.
From the way that things have progressed, it's like, looking where you guys are at now, and obviously the fact that it's like, you've taken the record, you've licensed it out to partners that you trust across the world, and it's like, you're obvious. It's a return to what it was like, obviously, when you were signed with Initial, like, you know, just kind of doing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm sure that's obviously a refreshingly fun way to do things.
Yeah. Oh, it's fucking great. I wouldn't trade it for the world, and it's so much fun to now. Honestly, it's so much fun.